Thank you very much. It's a great privilege to be part of this event today, and I want to say that I'm so sorry not to be physically present. I actually broke my ankle 2 weeks ago, but I can see you, so give me a wave. Say hello. Thank you very much, that's great, because I want to take us on a conversation into the future, and I'm so excited to be here. The timing is extraordinary, and I'm looking forward very much to Tara, Glenn, Andy, Erin, Michael, and so on. We have a fantastic programme. And I'm particularly sorry not to be able to wander around the extraordinary exhibition area, and I know that that's going to be a very important part of the whole experience. But my question is this: what is the future actually going to be like? You see, I work with around 400 of the largest companies in the world in every sector, helping them to understand tomorrow. And I'll tell you this, it's easy to be blind, and it's easy to miss something really important when we're so close to it. The timing of this event is extraordinary, obviously with COP27. And the two questions I have today for every one of the speakers, and we will be returning to this at the panel, is how fast can we go? And at how much greater scale? Because it's all about those two things. Now, what I've learned through advising many boards across the world is this: that most debate about the future is not about what's going to happen, because it's usually obvious. It's a question of by when. By when? Roland, by when will, let's say, the 1,000 hydrogen-powered planes be running around the world? By when? And indeed, I've got a question for you guys. Today, in this room, in Hamburg, I want you to put up your hands if you think that at least 50% of all new vehicles in Hamburg will be electric powered by 2030. Put up your hands if you think that's true. At least 50% of new vehicles sold in Hamburg will be electric powered by 2030. Okay. What about by 2027? Put your hands up again. Let me just see again. 2027, what do you think? You see, the future is all about timing. And for an auto company, this is absolutely mission critical. You can think you have the best strategy in the world for auto, but if you're 5 years too early or 5 years too late, you are finished. So it's very, very important. Again, we have 250 companies involved in developing these things, electric-powered taxis, and I'm looking forward to my first ride. Question: by when will there be at least 50 of these kinds of vehicles operating around Hamburg Airport? Very, very important questions. And then the next part of it is this, which is that going to be fast enough? So we're going to hear very exciting stories from Glenn. I'm looking forward to hearing from you, Glenn, about Airbus's exploration of hydrogen. And I'm not too concerned about whether it's hydrogen to electricity to power on the plane or whether we're burning hydrogen. This is for the technicians. What I'm fascinated about is the transition of fuel. But the question is, by when? By when will, let's say, 2,000 such airplanes be flying around the world? By when will we achieve some of the energy savings that United has? They've been putting these double winglets on planes, but by when will almost every plane they have be done? This is the issue for me. By when will we be allowing free flying so we don't have to force aircraft down traditional, highly congested flight corridors? By when? Now, at the same time, we know that the world can change faster than you can hold a board meeting. And nowhere do we see this more, as I'm sure Roland would agree, and others too, nowhere do we see this more than in the aviation sector. The fact is, COVID struck from almost nowhere. It's an illness I warned about for the last 30 years. I have been warning about the risks of global viral pandemic. But I didn't know when. I just knew it was a major risk. But not just COVID. Miscalculation by our regional power causing chaos. Again, it's something I warned about. It was in one of my books in 2015, 2019. The issue is this: events can crash into strategy. Events that we thought we could avoid, or we thought that maybe our existing 5-year plan, 10-year plan was fast enough. Then something happens and we realise we have to go twice as fast, 5 times as fast. And we can. I believe that we can. I believe this will be an outcome from today, not just being excited about technologies, the things we already have or what we know we will have soon, but excited about an acceleration. Now, we only need to look at COVID or what's happened between Russia and Ukraine to understand that the future is not just driven by innovation. It's driven by one single word. This word has dominated all of human history and will determine by when questions. And they're not just a question of innovation. It's a question of legislation, regulation. By when will the government of Germany force the sale of all cars to be electric? By when? Things can happen actually at extraordinary speed because emotion can change at extraordinary speed. Public mood changes, regulation changes, pressures change. Yet, and especially this is true in the aviation industry, many trends change much more slowly than we ever quite imagined. For example, let's take the jumbo jet. I mean, 446 jumbos are still flying around the world, but this plane only started flying in 1969. The average age of the global fleet is 11 years, and I would say that fundamentally the experience of flying for the average passenger at Hamburg airport today is more or less identical to what it was 20 years ago. So for all of our innovation and so on, the way we use the inside of the aircraft, the nature of the engines, the fundamental shape of the fuselage and the wings, how we organise people at the airport, yes, lots and lots of innovations, and of course we've celebrated those at previous ZAL events. But for the experience of the passenger, not so much. The reason why this is important is because of answering the question, by when will an innovation really start to change aviation? So we only have 2,700 new plane sales a year. Around a third of the entire fleet is in some desert somewhere not being used. We have 23,000 active planes. So you can do the maths. Even if every new plane today and for the rest of human history was powered, let's say, by hydrogen, it will take 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, 20 years to realise that change through the entire fleet. And it will mean an awful lot of retrofitting. And when we look at things like energy efficiency, we've already done it, you know, as previous ZAL events have shown. If you look at the scale here, you'll see that since the 1940s right through to 2022, we've seen a fantastic improvement in energy efficiency. That's wonderful, very exciting, I'm sure you would agree, Roland. But we're not going to see another 80% similar efficiency. That is done. That story is over, really. Of course, we have to go somewhere else. So my fundamental question is, how much faster can we go? Because I don't think we're going anything like fast enough. Even though I'm very excited about all the things we will hear about. You see, some things are accelerating. COVID is an example. It's massively accelerated our virtual working. It showed us new ways to do things and gave us some surprises. But the fact of the matter is, we also discovered a fundamental truth about change. If we want to accelerate change in aviation, for instance, we can't all work virtually, that's for sure. It's not just that we have to be physically present in hangars building technology, but something else. You see, Apple is possibly the most virtual and digital company in the world, but they discovered a huge problem with virtual. See, they discovered that they were brilliant at managing themselves digitally during lockdown. Even better than they ever imagined they could possibly be. But at the same time, they discovered a huge issue. They found that they were unable to think, unable to innovate, unable to change. Now, of course, for a company like Apple, that means you simply manage and optimize whatever you have until you're perfect, but you can't grow, you can't produce new products, and you can't change the future of the world. Now, if that's so for Apple, I suggest it's so for everyone else too. And actually, one of the reasons I'm saying this is because it's fundamentally good news for the aviation industry, because we need to meet to thrive. So I predicted that air travel would bounce back the moment that lockdown eased, and that's precisely what's happened. I predicted that the demand, the pent-up demand to do those deals, get on planes, have the business dinner, would be enormous, and that's precisely what's happened. Yes, we're not back to 100% yet, but as I predicted, it's bounced back much more quickly than the airlines and the aviation sector in general were ready for. And it's true that if you have one business over here that thinks it can do future deals in Qatar without getting on a plane, it will always lose out, almost certainly, to the business that gets on the plane and stays there for a week. This is actually very good news for the aviation sector. And the other really good news is this, that the human passion, the human spirit to explore, to go on holidays, to have experiences, to go as a family, to find community, to do stuff, this will continue, and it has going to be a very important, major part of our experience in the future. But one thing that COVID has done, which is not going to bounce back, is it's made us, as a world, much more thoughtful about this, about the destruction of the environment, about things like the fact that 2.3 billion people are now at risk of drought, 4.4 billion more in total will be at risk by 2050, others, maybe 1 billion, at risk from regular floods. Indeed, this is a COVID survey, but it's not changed since lockdown ended. 10,000 16 to 25-year-olds in Germany, in many other European countries, were asked some questions. 56% of them, that's nearly 6 out of 10, say that humanity is doomed. Just pause for a moment. That's not, oh, we're unhappy about the future. They're saying, then, oh, I sometimes worry about climate change. They are saying humanity is doomed. You can't get stronger than that. It's around 6 out of 10 again say governments have betrayed them, they've betrayed future generations, and they are very worried about climate change. Now, again, I'm going to ask a question. Put up your hands if you think, that in 10 years' time, that could have increased. It could be not just 6 out of 10, but maybe 7 out of 10, 8 out of 10 of these 40 people who are 14 years old today up to 24. They will be 24 to 34, but carrying the same passions. Put up your hands if you think those passions may well be much greater in 10 years' time than today. Put up your hands up now. Okay, the majority of you are saying this issue. You see, you can debate the science about global warming. I'm not doing that today. Whatever the debate is, I'll tell you the future in the near term will be driven by emotion, emotional reactions to what people feel about the science, and that is going to drive the future. So if you want to know the future of aviation, we have to look at possible changes in public mood over issues like climate over the next 10 or 15 years. So let's try and do that. So there's this sensation of having stolen from future generations. This is a common theme. Who are they? Well, the increasing angst is over this simple fact, which is that 85%, as you know, as I know, as we all know, of humanity is living not in Hamburg, but in emerging markets. And that 1% of the world, which we are all a part of this 1%, whether you're on the front row, one side or the other, on the back of the room, all of us in this room are 1%ers. We are generating 50% of all emissions, roughly, and 50% of all air flights, and of course, we have 1 billion people on the move, mainly from rural areas into cities over the next 10, 20, 30 years. We've had another 1 billion move in the last 30 years. What does that mean for the future of the world? Well, it's obvious. When they travel, they see your lifestyle and mine. They see it on CNN in a local bar, but they see it on their auntie's smartphone. They see privilege. And privilege means the freedom to travel. This fundamental desire of the human spirit to explore, and this will be one of the greatest drivers that you see on this unsustainable graph here on my left. It is extraordinarily powerful, and it's going to require more than just a hydrogen bit of innovation or some sustainable aviation fuel to sort this out. We're not going to stop travelling. That's the good news. Sustainable plane flight is absolutely going to be a part of our future. But look, as the World Economic Forum has said, aviation CO2 emissions could rise from around 2.5, it's 3 point something when you allow for the additional warming effects, but around 2.5% today to 22% of all global emissions by 2050, unless something happens much, much faster than right now. Because I lecture to just about every industry in the world, and I can tell you that the aviation sector is way behind. It's harder to fix. But if you compare it to, let's say, the auto industry, or let's say the water industry, or a whole host. So the key is going to be rapid transformational change. Let's just come back to COVID again. See, my first training is as a physician, and I was looking after people dying of cancer and of viral conditions. And I can tell you this, that the technology, the speed of technology innovation during the COVID pandemic accelerated by a factor of 4 or 5 times. Never in human history have we seen things go so fast. And it was the reason was that people like me asked the same question. They said, they turned up at conferences like this for COVID, where you had innovation, innovation, innovation. And the 2 questions were this: how can you go 4 times faster, and how can you go to 5 times the scale in the same period of time? 4 times faster innovation, 5 times further in rollout. Can it be done? Answer, well, you'd have to parallel all kinds of processes. Yes, yes, yes. They did it. And we've never ever done such a thing before. Pharma is permanently changed. We will never ever go back to the old ways. The speed of innovation is transformed forever in pharma. We've seen the same with the conflict between Russia and Ukraine. If you look at the intense innovation regarding autonomous flying vehicles, quite extraordinary. This is our sector after all, aviation sector, but used in the military sense. So where there is urgency, where there is a compelling reason, we see dramatic acceleration. So my question is this: what would it take if the world actually declared war on CO2 and the climate emergency? No, I'm not just talking about COP27. I'm not just talking about 50 more Greta Thunbergs or others like that. I'm talking about a major shift. What would it take? And how would that affect the aviation industry most? Would it be through shareholder expectations, customer, travellers, what is it? Or would it be legislation coming crashing in? I'll tell you it will be legislation, almost certainly, in combination with other things. So what kind of event might trigger this? Well, I'll tell you it won't be more of this. It will not be more photographs of polar bears. Polar bears upsetting enough, but why won't it be that? Because we've seen these pictures for the last 30 years. And it certainly won't be another graph like this updated to 2030, because we already predict what the graph is for 2030, so it will not be new. The kind of things that will change our world will be something of an event, which, what does it do? It drives the most important factor in human history. It's not the event, it's the emotional reaction to it. So let's consider 2 potential events as examples of things that could well come crashing into business strategy and propel us at a 4-fold speed greater than today in terms of the transformation of aviation, which is really important because we have the technologies here today to respond. The first is methane. Now, not many people focus on methane, but there are already areas in the former Soviet Union, in Siberia, where you can jump on the ground, stamp your foot, poke a stick and drop a cigarette lighter, and suddenly there's a flare of gas, and you're seeing this heat erupting, and it doesn't go out for a while. It's bubbling methane that's been frozen for 100 million years. You see, methane, okay, fine, so someone's done it. Actually, it's much more serious than you might think. Let me just show you why. You see, there is more carbon in frozen methane than in all the global coal, oil and gas reserves. Now, we sometimes worry about hydrogen, and we can only use it if it's cool to incredibly low temperatures, below centigrade and so on. Well, actually methane's the same. Methane is trapped in its frozen form, but it's bubbling up at a crazy rate at the moment. An example is this: a spontaneous explosion which created a hole 50 meters deep in the middle of nowhere, where no human beings live, just because of ignition of underground bubbling away deposits of methane. Does it matter? Well, let me just show you another reason why it might. This is a graph of CO2 and, imposed on it, methane. I just want you to notice that while CO2 has been doing all kinds of things in terms of emissions each year, look what's happened. This is since prehistory. Look what's happened to methane. Does it matter? Yes, it might. In Siberia at the moment, there are hundreds, maybe thousands of underground fires burning, and they will remain burning through the frozen winter. Even with half a metre of snow or ice over the landscape, these methane fires continue to burn, and then they will spring up in the summer. Does it matter? It might. Methane, when it burns, releases heat under the ground, which in course thaws out more methane so it feeds itself. Now, I've told you, I've said that most of the world's carbon is frozen. And most of the world's carbon is in areas which are defrosting. Put up your hands if you think this might actually be important in the story of the future of climate change. Put up your hands if you think the methane story could just turn out to be quite important. Okay. Put up your hands if you think it's just a possibility. Just a possibility. We could see maybe a gigantic event. Let's say in parts of Russia. Where we see, say, a greater release from Siberia. Did you know that in some parts of Siberia the temperature went up to 30 degrees centigrade this summer? Put up your hands if you think, as a result of such things, we might see a major event regarding release of methane in a single year over the next decade. Put your hands up. Okay. Now here's another one which I think is even more likely to produce an event. An event that could completely change the speed at which airlines are allowed to continue to innovate. As a physician, you may not know this, but if I was to turn the temperature up in this room right now, Roland, and really start you sweating, and put steam in here as well, so the room temperature is going up to 28, 29, 30, 32, 33. Once we get to 35 degrees, if there is 100% humidity, you can't sweat. The water pours off you, but you don't cool down, and basically you die. I could lock you all in here and you will be dead in 6 hours. I'll be fine, I'll be at home. But here in this room you would be at great risk. And an elderly die first, but no one would survive 6 hours. In fact, some recent experiments have decided that actually that statistic is wrong. It's probably 34 degrees for a great proportion of the population. 34 degrees. But last June we had 33.6 degrees in Delhi. What's the population of Delhi? It's over 10 million. Fortunately not for 6 hours. And of course it wouldn't be the wealthy 1% that die, they'll be in air-conditioned places. So my question is this. It happened, by the way, in Pakistan too, in May. 33.6 degrees centigrade for over an hour. So my question is this. You've seen this statistics of global warming. What do you think is the risk of such an issue emerging? Let's say in Delhi, at some point over the next 10 to 15 years, actually we do have an event, it lasted 7 hours, and as a result 1 million people died. 1 million. That's 400 there. And put up your hands if you think, just possible, that such an event, even 10% possibility, 30% possibility, that such an event could happen somewhere in the world over the next decade. Put up your hands if you think that's a possibility. My friends, look around you. Put your hands up again and look around the room. You're seeing the future of the aviation industry. I've said the future is not about statistics, it's about emotion. And I think it doesn't require much imagination to see that if such a thing was to happen in any city, if you had more than 250,000 men, women and small children dying and babies, there would be such an outcry that you would find that all kinds of actions were taken almost immediately, almost overnight. So how can we move from threat to opportunity today? Because today is about opportunity. Today is about using the tools we have to fix an issue which I suggest is going to become much more urgent and pressing than we ever imagined last year. Now, of course, we go straight to things like solar and wind, but actually the biggest stories are elsewhere. It's to do with coal. And let me just encourage you now. I'm going to encourage you from other sectors, because here is an example. You see, let's take the gas industry. Every time you convert a coal-fired power station to gas, which and we have so many coal-fired power stations being built around the world in emerging markets right now, but every time you do that, you save something like 30% of all carbon emissions. So here is one innovation, just one, which has required no investment by government, that has completely transformed the gas sector in 5 years. That single technology is shale gas exploration. It's highly controversial in Europe, but in the US they decided to deregulate because they considered it a national security matter, to be independent of, quotes, rogue states like Russia or Saudi Arabia in the future, and as a result of that the US is now a net exporter of oil and gas, just as government policy decided. But here's the key. In 5 years, one innovation at zero cost to government, in one nation only, they have increased the proven global gas reserves. That's the reachable reserves at an affordable price that we know where it is, we just need to carry on drilling and lifting it up, from 60 years before it completely runs out at current rates to 200 years. What that means is it will never run out, because of course we will never need that amount of gas at the rate we'll keep decarbonising. I'm just making the point. One single innovation, which we've had around for 20 years, but has gone faster and to greater scale, has completely revolutionised our world for gas. And actually, without it, we'd be really stuffed now in Europe, especially in Germany, regarding the crisis with Russia. It's American gas, it's the fracking revolution, that single innovation in that single country that has saved Europe in the current crisis of energy. Now, what about cars? The same. If you look at e-vehicles, I've been talking about e-vehicles for 25 years. Why? I'm a futurist. That's what I do. I predict the future. But even I don't think predicted correctly that the growth would be quite so fast this year. 63% this year globally is very impressive. I think we'd all agree. I'm just saying, actually, here is an example where the manufacturers have gone faster than the regulators. So many of my clients are very, very large auto companies, and they made a decision, many of them, never to invest in a new gas or petrol engine. A new diesel or petrol engine. They said, that's it, it's toast, finished, last century, it's all electric. And maybe a little bit hydrogen. But for them, electric batteries is the big one. And utterly fascinating. So they've been driving much faster than governments. Governments have been catching up and thinking, oh, well, we probably can ban them by 2030 in our country because the industry is perfectly able to cope. And in the meantime, if you look what's happened regarding the re-engineering of the old vehicles, well, it's not just retiring the old engines, but it's something else to do with biofuels. Now, this is a very controversial area, because this has taken off so much as a success story that it's now being modelled by the aviation sector without realising the problem of combining auto and aviation into the same issue. 10% of all grain now grown in the entire world, and 10% of the world's farming land is used to grow food to burn in vehicles. And in fact, I will get put in prison now in my country if I try and drive 10 kilometres down the road without burning food in my car. I'll say that again. If I refuse to burn food in my car, I can get sent to prison in 20 countries. Why? It's against the law. It's against the law not to burn food in your vehicle. You say, well, there's no problem with that. Well, there might be. Why is that? Because at the moment, 10% of global grain is an awful lot of food. When we have 7 billion people alive, nearly 8, many of whom are hungry today. And actually, we know from many surveys that burning 10% of all grain has had an impact on global food prices. And of course, it's not the richest 1%, the people in this room or me at home that suffers from that, even though in the UK at the moment food prices have gone up this month by 14% on last year. No. Actually, it's the poorest of the poor, of course. It's those in Congo, Burundi, the slums of Kinshasa. These are the people. And so we discover a truth here, which is it's easy to come up with something that sounds good in European Union, European Commission policy or so on energy, but if you're not careful, you literally just jump out of one problem straight into another. Now, the trouble is, we've got the same issue with sustainable aviation fuel, and I've not seen very much joined-up conversation about this. So let's just explore this one. So, yes, fantastic solution, wonderful. Some have said it's the only viable solution implemented at scale before 2050. Fine. But we don't produce any of it really at the moment. Only 200,000 metric tonnes a year. That's less than 0.1% of what we'd actually need. So the European Union alone will need, if we want to do SAF for all flights, we will need at least 40 million tonnes of SAF. And you can see where it comes from. Cooking oil. Oh, great. I mean, how many McDonald's hamburgers are people in Germany eating every day? You can't. There is not enough cooking oil in the world, even if it was all used, every single gram, to fuel this. So then you go into other areas. Okay, yes, so biological rubbish, fine. Yes, okay, so food waste, oh yes, fine. Well, a lot of that goes to feed pigs at the moment. Everything is connected to everything else. And before you know where you are, you're into the really toxic area. You say, oh, we'll use wood chippings. Wood chippings. So the trouble with that is, we're now putting an additional price on woodland, and actually what we've done throughout all of this is we've joined up two prices. We've joined the price of land and farming and everything associated with it, including woodland management, with energy prices and indeed the passion of the 1% of the world who are very wealthy to fly. And who's going to win that particular economic battle? Well, you can be sure it'll be people like us rather than someone who's only on $1 a day. So the world as a whole would need 450 billion litres of SAF just for 65% of flights by 2050. That's according to the IATA. That's 360 million tonnes of SAF per year. And I can tell you this stuff's quite inefficient to make. Once you go away from cooking oil, of which there's hardly any around, and by the way, the auto industry wants it, the bus industry wants it, then you're stuck with things like this. You're only going to get 13% of a tonne of fuel out of a tonne of wood in wood shavings. So again, this has to be thought through. It's lovely ideas, but how do they actually impact the wider world when we put them together with all the other changes that I'm seeing? Now this leads us on to one of the stories that's going to dominate this afternoon, quite rightly, which is hydrogen, zero-emission craft, and I'm very excited about this area. But again, we have to face the big issues. Hydrogen, in a way, nothing new. Since the 1950s we've been doing it, and wonderfully it's less fuel weight per amount of energy, but it's, as you know, 4 times larger. So in theory we only needed around 128 million tonnes, let's say, of green hydrogen to replace 360 million tonnes of sustainable aviation fuel because of its higher specific energy. But the International Energy Agency itself has calculated that even if you were only to make 70 million tonnes of green hydrogen a year, which is nothing like enough to power the whole of aviation, it would consume, just making it, would consume the entire energy output of the European Union currently. Oh, by the way, all of it would have to be green power to satisfy this. You can't have any other form of hydrogen than that. It's got to be green power, equivalent to the entire output of the European Union, and that would not power the whole of the aviation sector, even today, without this incredible growth we're expecting, as we saw earlier. So what does that mean? What it means is that we are terribly short of green energy, but the wonderful news is that hydrogen could be an extraordinarily versatile solution. But again, we're in competition with our home here. We are heated by natural gas. I'm sure that many of you are. You'll have your homes heated by natural gas, which is why we're so dependent on what's happening in Russia at the moment and what the US can do to help us. But the point is this, that if, let's say, 25% of all homes in Germany and industry convert from natural gas to hydrogen over the next 30 years, then we're in the same market as aviation. This is my point. So we have to go somewhere new to solve this, and it requires very, very big decisions. So we know that next generation solar will be 40% more efficient. We know that solar cells were 400 times their cost in 75 than today, and of course we will see dramatic improvements. And I can tell you that many experts have calculated that so long as we can deal with the storage issue at night, which we can using battery technology, we already have the technology to power the whole of America from 100 kilometers by 100 kilometers of Arizona desert, just using existing technology, using high voltage direct current grids rather than the AC voltage grids we're used to. We can move power from maybe from one city to another over maybe 4,000 or 5,000 kilometers with not much loss. In fact, we could, I mean, as has often been said, you know, we could look for cold fusion, but we have the greatest fusion reactor we want in the sun, and just 120,000 square kilometers, sounds a lot, could power the whole world. It's equivalent to 1.3% of the Sahara Desert. Now, at this point, you're saying, yes, 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 I understand this, Patrick, but it's all beyond me. It's too big to even imagine. Okay, but here's an example of a very small step that has just taken place in the last 24 hours in a single nation. And as a result of this single step, this single announcement, which will cost the government nothing. They will have the equivalent in green power as if they built 10 new nuclear power stations, and it's going to happen within 3 years mostly and completed in 5. What am I talking about? Actually, all I'm talking about is this. The French government, with a single stroke of a single pen, have decided that every car park owner that has more than 80 car park places has to build solar panels over the cars in the car park, and they've got 36 months to do it. Now, of course, the car park owners will shout, but they'll make money. They can get interest back, the interest covered on the loans from the revenue. But the point is this: the payback period for solar cells is relatively short in terms of the power that you generate, which you can sell. Let's say it's 9 years or 10, after which the car park owner is making pure profit for the next 20 years. So it's an issue of capital for these car park owners, but the French government's not worried about that. I'm just saying, when you consider how governments might respond, you can see there are hundreds and hundreds of things that they could do relatively quickly that produce very lasting change, whether it's to do with building regulations, auto industry regulations, whether it's car parking regulations, whether it's indeed regulations regarding hydrogen. So I have a question to myself really, and also to you. By when do we think it might be the case that in at least one European country it becomes almost impossible to land a plane that isn't fueled by hydrogen? By when? By what year? That is to say, it becomes incredibly expensive. They make it almost impossible to land a plane using kerosene or sustainable aviation fuel. And finally, just look at this on the right. This is very, very important. If you look at this graph here, I just want you to notice that what's important is the yellow here. It's the investment in renewables. And by the way, hydrogen you can see is virtually nowhere. But I just want you to see that in total, actually, if you look at the 32 billion invested in 2004, you can see that there, and you go up to 755. The only year we've seen any really big jump is last year, and we'll see another one in the current year. But we are going to see, in order to get to where we need to go, you can see the future. You see, you hardly have to be a futurist here, it's so obvious. You can see that we have to go at a scale 2, 3, 4 or 5 times faster. And we will, in terms of green energy innovation. That itself will provide all kinds of new power sources for things like hydrogen, which will mean that we are able to go much faster in terms of the implementation of many of the technologies we have here today. So in conclusion, very exciting day, very important technology. Can't wait to hear Taras, Glenn, Andy, Erin, Michael and so on, all the important things that you're going to be sharing very soon. Thank you very much indeed.
To see, is Patrick?
We have a few gifts for our speakers.
Okay, shall we? I think you've followed us here today online, and after listening to these presentations and after your input, I have a question. What was the thing that struck you the most during all of these presentations? I mean, we're covering the same topic from different angles, so what did struck you the most?
Thanks, Roland. Well, what an extraordinary day. Utterly fascinating, just as we expected. I think that what struck me most, I don't know about you, Roland, but I was thinking to myself, so many things in our world have become optimized, haven't they? Like the iPhone in my pocket. I'm not really sure how we'll make this dramatically better in the next 20 years. Same with, airlines. So much of what we have taken for granted has been so well optimized. But it seems to me, Roland, that we're going to see more innovation in the next 10 years than in the last 30. And, I was thinking about the message we had from Charles about starting small. I love these tiny little fuel cells that were in people's pockets. Amazing that he then went to revolutionise toys. It's all about innovation, small, fast, agile. This to me was very exciting. The idea of something really hit me home. It was a throwaway comment, but that you need water as well as power. If we're going to do this on such a vast scale, we're going to have to find ourselves some nations which have a lot of water to make the hydrogen that we're going to need. I'm looking forward to finding a solution, by the way, to selling off the oxygen that we're making at the same time. But hydrogen clusters, that was very interesting to me. The idea of co-opetition, that clusters of airlines are working together to hydrogenize, if you like, to hydrogenize airport after airport so that we have destinations to go to where there's fantastic infrastructure. Capture CO2, it's an interesting thought. I think it was overwhelmingly clear to me that airlines are going to have to work together to create this, to create the infrastructure, to create the supply chain, whether it's their own supplies of sustainable aviation fuel, as Boeing is doing, whether it's our own supplies of hydrogen, which might mean owning an entire huge solar array in a desert, whatever it is. So I think that those were some of the things that really struck me.
Okay, so second.
Okay.
So Patrick is always very great on this. Second question is, you've seen a lot of industries, and you're not an expert in aviation industry, so you've seen a lot of other industries as well. Is there anything you could advise to the aviation industry as we tackle our decarbonization? Any industry and you could inspire here? Yes,
well, I mean, the obvious one, so I hardly want to mention this one because we've talked about it already. The obvious one is the auto sector. I just say they have a complicated question, much more complicated than airlines. If you think of the challenge of getting hydrogen or even electricity into 1 million different charging points across the European Union, for example, the challenge of getting hydrogen charging points, for example, into large airports like Hamburg is very simple. But the real one that I would focus on is pharma. You see, pharma is so obsessed with safety. You know, can you imagine if we'd made a big mistake over the vaccines? Can you imagine if we discovered that, let's say, 1 in 1,000 teenage children are going to have long-term health problems because of the vaccine? So we had to go through gigantic controls, but we did it so fast. And I think there's a lesson there. You see, the normal drug process is, it's $1 billion, it takes 10 years to get a drug to market, Roland. But we did it in 12 months. And we did it without compromising on safety. And the way we did it is by completely reinventing the regulatory and approval process. And I think it needs to start there. I think there's conversations to have with the airline regulators and say, how can we start to test new types of airframe before we've even proven the hydrogen, the safety of the hydrogen cylinder to go inside the airframe? Do you see what I'm saying? I think there are all kinds of very interesting conversations to learn from the COVID experience.
Patrick, this really gives me an idea for the next innovation days, or at least the next discourse. We're going to invite the pharma industry, some experts with pharmaceutical regulations and some regulators from the aviation industry, and we bring them together here and see how we can speed up the innovation process here. So good idea, I'll take here on that. The last question is, in your keynote, you have illustrated the importance of emotions. I mean, this was your key element there. Historically, aviation has already always been connected to positive emotions, like all the traveling we do around the world, which was really inspiring. And still, for me personally, it's still the main value of aviation is really meeting new cultures, meeting new people, and this is really a positive feeling. But this has significantly changed with flight shaming and stuff. Do you see a chance that aviation can return to creating positive emotions without having to go through another black swan event first, which you mentioned, the 2 examples you gave us? Do you think we can come back to this positive feeling of flying?
Yes, I really do. And you know where I think it'll be? And I'm so excited about this, Roland, I can't wait. I can't wait to get on board my first hydrogen-powered flight, where every molecule of hydrogen on that particular plane has been created from solar power. And all it's emitting is water. And I'll tell you, I'll be social mediaing it for the rest of my life, that I was on that flight. You know, it's going to be an amazing sensation. Even if we can't do it for more than 5% of flights for a long time, just the story is so compelling. I think it will be as exciting as the time I got on Concorde for the first time. And, so yes, absolutely. And you know what too, I've just been, we need to work away at the figures, and of course the costs of energy go up and down, but you know, I think that we will find that, we will find carbon taxes on fuel. You know, in the Netherlands, you get to $3 on top of a gallon for diesel or petrol. And yet on the aviation, if you get on a plane in Amsterdam airport, in Schiphol, you pay zero carbon tax. So once those kinds of things get sorted out in the market, we will find that the price difference between the carbon and the hydrogen starts to reduce, and then we will get issues of volume. And of course there's then the moral issue, and I think we will find that hydrogen becomes much more affordable, green hydrogen, much more affordable than we can imagine today. And so I'm looking forward to that, and that will be very exciting.
Good. So Patrick, we have a plan. We're both going to be on the plane then together and celebrate that first flight. So positive emotions. That's our final remark here from this today's event, let's say, making change happen with positive emotions in the end. So Patrick, thanks for the last comments here from your side. Really nice having you here on board, and
absolute pleasure.
Recovery for your foot there.
In this room are all the answers we need to transform the world for the future, so we can all fly well and safely. Thank you.
So, you see, that's an applause on your side. So, but still, Patrick, I still have to invite you to join us here someday when you recover to
yes, please.
Get a tour here. I think it's so you have to come by and
yes,
and get a tour here.
I'm so upset not to have actually physically touched all the amazing exhibitions that you have outside. Yeah. There's something about breathing the same air.
Thank you so much.
Right, bye-bye.
Thank you so much, Patrick.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Bye-bye. Thank you.